is the kind of leadership that Africa needs?
It's not a simple one. It's many things, huh? Because Africa is complex. Huh? So for one, it's definitely, I'll throw in a couple of words that reflect it. But for one, it's self-aware, it's empowering, it's transformative, it's inclusive, it's bold, it's courageous. Those are some of the elements of the type of leadership that this continent needs.
Can you help us unpack?
Aha. So what are the words you got? So I think one of the things I first said, it's self-aware. Huh? So what do I mean by that? I find that on this continent, our relationship with people in leadership roles, particularly when we look at a lot of our cultural norms, those in leadership roles have been chiefs, kings, people, again, maybe religious leaders, and there's a lot of power, respect, and therefore high levels of hierarchy bestowed on people in leadership positions. Huh? Now, we all know that, what is that saying about power corrupts? And and corrupts absolutely? Yes, yes. Absolute power
corrupts absolutely.
There you go. Huh? And so what is the vaccine? What is the antidote to ensuring that when you're in a leadership position on this continent, where everybody wants to hold your bag, where nobody will tell you the truth because you know you are Oga, because you are Reverend so-and-so, because you're Director so-and-so, it means the antidote to not letting the power go to your head is your deep levels of self-awareness. Your ability to check yourself, because guess what? Chances are others won't check you. So that's where the self-awareness comes. You are actually able to know yourself well, see yourself in the moment, and check yourself in the moment. So that's why the self-awareness is so particularly important in our context. In other contexts, let's say I take a Scandinavian system where there's very flat structure. They don't care who you are, if you're the boss, they'll tell you as it is. They're constant checks on those who have power. Constant. It's part of their history. It's part of their particularly when you look at their governance. That's so for them, if you're not self-aware, somebody will still pull you back. But here again, because of so many of the trappings of leadership, if you're not careful, if you're not self-aware, you can easily lose your way. So hence, that's why self-awareness, I say, is very important. What was the second one I said?
You shifted to empowering.
Yes, good. Empowering was the second one.
Empowering is transformative.
Yeah. And empowering is so important, very much tied to also the first point in terms of the hierarchy, because unfortunately, in many instances on this continent, power is not shared equally. Power is either held, if I think about it economically, is held by a group of elites. If I think about it in terms of age, is held by often older folks. When I think about it in terms of gender, it's held by primarily men. So you can see in so many respects, there's lots of inequality in terms of how power is managed, and power is managed by those in leadership positions. So if you find yourself in a leadership position on this continent, you're in a very privileged position. And so one of the key things that is incumbent, if we're going to transform and change the rules of the game, where you constantly see the kind of inequity I just described, is that you have to be the kind of leader that's constantly bringing up people, encouraging people, coaching people, making sure that people feel confident, whether they're a woman, whether they're young, whether they're from any particular group that is marginalized. That's the importance of the empowering leadership. So that's why empowering. The transformative comes, there's so much to change. If you're a leader on this continent and all you're doing is maintaining the status quo, you're just a manager. I think it's literally incumbent. There is too much that needs to be transformed and changed. And when I say transformed, for me, I use that word quite intentionally, because to me, change is just where, if you imagine if people are playing musical chairs, and all of a sudden people, you say, oh, music has started, now go change the chairs. People change the seats. Same people still sitting on the same chairs. Transformation is where you just remove all the chairs and sit on the floor. We're not even playing this game anymore. We're playing a completely different game. And so for me, it's not what this continent needs. It's not just change, but it's actual transformation, because the rules of the game need to change. Too many people on this continent, in this country, are not benefiting the way a few elites are benefiting. So that's why I say transformative.
And it has to be bold. It has to be courageous.
Ah, yes, bold. The boldness comes. You have to have a big vision. Huh? I mean, I think there's a certain level of urgency. All of us need to start dreaming big in terms of the kinds of transformation we want to bring about. We can't be tinkering around in the margins. Things are urgent in terms of the kinds of changes we want to bring. It needs to be courageous, because changing the status quo is very hard on this continent. We're very conservative people. We're conservative, and we are, I think one of our strengths definitely is Ubuntu. I am, because we are, we're people who are very connected. There's a deep premium put on belonging. I belong to this family. I belong to this clan. I belong to this church. I belong to this alumni association, these groups of belonging. Now, when you want to bring about change and transformation, it might mean that you're rubbing against the way things have always been done by the group. And so people might start to say, oh, you too, why do you want to do this differently? Oh, now what again? You're always trying to come up with these new things. Why can't you just go with the flow? Why don't... So you have to be courageous to stand alone to drive change. And when you think about some of the biggest change makers, the people who made the huge difference on this continent, many of them had moments where they had to stand alone. That's why the courage.
Wow. This is a whole course. I'm sure we can have this at a small fee. Taaka,
yes.
You have also gone beyond just organization development and helping organizations structure and restructure and training and coaching. And then we recently saw Leadership in Africa Redefined. I have my copy.
Yay, I have mine too.
You're in good company.
Yes.
Untold stories. And Taaka, why did you write this book?
Daniel, there were 3 reasons I wrote the book. One of them is because of the nature of the work that I do, as you know. I'm working constantly with so many different African leaders. And what I was finding were so many, all the words I described actually, Daniel, I was encountering self-aware, empowering, inclusive, bold, courageous leaders on this continent. I kept encountering them. And yet, Daniel, that was not the narrative I was hearing on leadership in Africa. All of us know the narrative on leadership in Africa is about autocratic, greedy, thieving politicians. As if that's it. Those are the only leaders on this continent. And even you will see that anytime when I'm not even talking about what others say about us. Let's even leave that. When you hear what we say about ourselves and our leadership, we define ourselves by the worst of us. And I'm like, nah. This narrative needs to change because it's only a small part of the story. And what I've come to know is narratives are very important. The way you see yourself as a race, as a group of people, will define what you aspire to. If you all think you're useless at leadership, when you are mediocre, you'll say, but that's the way we are. But when you know the standard is so high, when you're mediocre, you'll be like, but we need to. So my first reason, Daniel, was to change the narrative on leadership to focus on the best of us, not the worst of us, because I believe narratives matter to how we practice. That was the first. The second is, again, Daniel, you see in the work that we do, you can see we're always, who are we quoting? John Maxwell, bless him, I love him. But all the rest, really, they are not speaking to our unique context. Again, I love all these writers. I read them all the time. But there are certain things about our context that are quite different. And we all know leadership is very situational. Again, none of them speaks to issues that, how do you hold somebody accountable who's always called you Uncle Daniel, Auntie Taaka, that sees themselves as part of the family? How do you navigate those, mommy, let me take you. How do you navigate those boundaries around accountability when it still seems you are just at their outdooring, you have been for their sister's mother's funeral, it's all of. So I felt that the second thing was we needed a body of work on leadership in our context with practical examples that spoke to the challenges, but also ideas from leaders on how to deal with typical types of challenges in our context. So that was the second. And then the final reason was really to have something that we could pass on to the next generation of leaders. I've kept saying that when I see the current state of this continent, I worry that what we will be passing on is going to be a tough situation. So we want to make sure that the next generation is well equipped to do better than us. So that was the third reason, to provide a resource for the next generation of leaders.
Thank you very much, Taaka. Taaka, so where can we find this wonderful book? I finished reading the book.
Well done. Nice one.
So maybe someone wants to get a copy. There's so much I have gleaned from this book. I've been doing leadership for a while, and I know, you're on top of issues and the examples, the stories that you shared, and how you weaved that into how we can also pick these lessons on our leadership journey. So I want to get a copy. Where can I get?
Okay, so if you're in Accra, there are a number of places. One, Shell Signboard, we all know Shell Signboard. Number two, Vidya Bookshop. So it's Vidya, and they're in Osu and Laboni, Vidya Bookshops. The other place is Blue Knight Bookshops. They're at Melcon, at Spintex, just near Flower Porters. That's Blue Knight. But if you don't mind and you like reading books online, and if you're not in Accra, you can get it on Amazon or on Book Nook. But I can tell you the simplest way, in case you haven't written this all down, please just go to the book website, which is my name. One word, taakaawori.com, and all the information is there. So taakaawori.com. And even through the book website, we can have a book delivered to you if you like as well. So taakaawori, one word.com.
And I can't recommend this book more than what you've already heard. Friends, if you are on and you don't have a copy of this book, I did a Facebook post on it, so I assume that you've gotten your copy. Even up until now, you've not gotten your copy yet. You are creating a problem for us to solve. Africa, we have issues to deal with. We have a lot to change already. Don't add extra. Get a copy of this book. It says Leadership in Africa Redefined, Untold Stories. And it's written by the one and only Taaka Awori, founder of Busara, Africa. And I can guarantee you, look, you'll be blessed. I'm just looking at all the markings I've done and the notes I've done in my copy.
Oh, I'm glad. What's one of those things you underlined, Daniel?
Well, let me share one.
Okay.
So under the introduction, I made a line under where you talk about this leadership determines your ability to bounce back after crisis and bounce forward even further. This isn't just any type of leadership. It's leadership from the inside out. It's agile, transformative leadership. Leadership is grounded in a person's commitment. And this is my favorite part. Leadership is grounded in a person's commitment to doing the inner work necessary to become someone others want to follow.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I haven't seen that post, Daniel. I need to look at that post you've done. I need to, yes, and respond to that. Thank you. But I'm so glad you raised that. I should have said that because that is a big thing, a big theme that's influenced my leadership. And one of the things I have seen as making the difference in somebody's ability to be the type of leader that this continent needs. But I wonder, Daniel, when I say that people need to do the inner work, I wonder if that's understood. I've never known in an African context. Well,
unpack it for us.
To me, often doing the inner work is a little bit around the work we talked about around self-awareness. But it's a couple of things. One, it's learning how to manage your ego. Number two, it's also learning how to deal with the traumas from your past and how to heal those. Too many of us, when I look at dysfunctional leadership behavior, often it comes from all kinds of childhood stuff that has never been healed. So doing the inner work sometimes means making peace with that. To me, doing the inner work is also finding your unique way of connecting with the divine within. And I'm not talking about religiosity. I'm talking about finding that way to connect with spirit, that divine. Doing the inner work means coming to a level where you learn how to accept all parts of you, even the shadow sides of us. Many of us have grown up in a context where we're so hard on ourselves. So we just want the good things to shine. We don't know how to make peace with the not so good things on ourselves, about ourselves. So to me, those are examples of how you do the kinds of things that are involved in doing the inner work.
Taaka, this is so widespread across the continent of Africa. Considering our upbringing and the environments we grew up in, a lot is said to you and teasing at school. And all things making you feel
exactly. Because there isn't as much sensitivity. See, you with your big head, you too known, you're what, all of those kinds of things we don't realize because we haven't been socialized at times with the sensitivities. We have a certain way of how children should be raised. We don't realize the kind of dramas, the traumas that get perpetuated. Somebody asked me a question on a similar type program that I haven't been able to answer, however. And they said to me, is there an African way of doing the inner work? Because they said, and what it was a program of Pan-Africanism. They said, you know, the West has been very clear about how to do it. They've come and they've told us this is how you do it. And they have 1 billion books. All these self-development books, personal development books will give you 1,001 frameworks, tools, and recipes. But they're like, so what is that African thing? And I didn't really have an answer to them. I said, what you will see in the book are examples of how Africans have done the inner work in diverse ways. But if I had to say this is the African way, I don't have an answer. So that's something I'm going to continue to explore, because I wasn't sure.
Well, we look forward to another book.
Sure.
That'll tackle maybe, among other things, how to do the inner work, the African way.
There you go.
So Emmanuel is asking, what are the key characteristics of transformational leader, of a transformational leader? And how does such a leader lead a transformational agenda in an organization, in a competitive corporate environment, and still remain a servant leader?
That's a lot. So I'm hearing what are the characteristics and how. Let me throw out some ideas, and thank you, Emmanuel, for that very thoughtful question. This is what I've seen in terms of those who have been really, the kind of characteristics I've seen by those who have been very good at transforming organizations. First, they listen deeply. They're excellent listeners. I find those who rush in to try and transform institutions without the ability to understanding others, and that understanding that comes through listening becomes it becomes problematic. They hit their head against the wall. So they're able to listen deeply. Number two, they have a deep sense of organizational awareness. Before you start transforming a system or organization, you really need to understand it. So that you know how to move around. And if you don't understand it, then it becomes the third element. They're very good at bringing others on board. I have seen leaders who have completely failed in transformative agendas because they've tried to do it by themselves. So that third thing is about bringing others along with you. And that means you're going to have to use so many different strategies in terms of how do you communicate what's in it for them, so that they come along with you? How do you make them feel involved? How do you deal with all their fears and anxieties? Because maybe that's the fourth thing I would say, is that transformation is very scary to people because it's deep change. So if you're bringing about change and not dealing with the emotional dimensions, you're in trouble. I have been part of 3 major organizational change support efforts in the last 3 years. And each time I see that the top leaders have been very focused on changing structure, strategy, getting people in and off the bus. But what they have left out, those things are important. I'm not saying they're not. What they've left out is supporting people to manage the emotional dimension of change and uncertainty. And so what they have faced as a result is high levels of resistance. So it's when you're able to deal with that emotional dimension, encourage people, show empathy, at the same time, give them hope. That's what I mean concretely. Then you're better able to bring them along. Which maybe in some respects answers your question then, Emmanuel. So how? You do all of those things. You listen deeply, bring people along, bring in the emotional dimensions, give them a clear vision for change. All of that is key in bringing about transformation. Daniel, he said something about, and yet still be a servant in a highly political what? And still be a servant, what was that?
And still be, so he's asking about in a competitive corporate environment, you are doing transformative or transformational leadership and pursuing transformational agenda. And you are also expected to be a servant leader.
Yeah. You know, I've operated in very highly competitive corporate environments. And I always say when those environments stay aligned to your values. If you stay aligned to your values, you can still be a real servant leader. Even as people are playing all their politics and competition around you, you stay on track. That's what I would say.